Hi, today's video is part of my ongoing series on how to clean the controls on NuTone remote intercom stations, and today's subject is a NuTone ISB53. This is from the NuTone IMA516 intercom system, and it's a fairly simple station. 516 systems are primarily a voice-only intercom system, although they do have background music as an option. And what we have here is a fairly simple design. We have a volume control, we have 3 buttons here, and if we turn the speaker over on the back, we simply have a 3.5-inch speaker cone here and a switchboard with a couple perpendicular boards soldered onto it, and these are the ones that contain the switches. And down here on the other side of this part of the board is the volume control. You can see that this one, someone has clipped the wires off of it when they removed it instead of loosening the screws and undoing the wires. Very bad, shame on you. Don't do this. Always unscrew the wires, take them off properly. So to clean the switches on one of these, you have to remove this board. You can't really do this with the board in place because you can't get access to the volume control, and you really can't get very good access to the switches themselves. So I'm going to go ahead and take this off. The circuit board is held in place with the 6 screws that hold the wires, and also one little screw down here. So I'm going to go ahead and take this apart, and I'll show you how to remove it from the faceplate. Okay, so I've taken out my 6 screws that the wires would be attached under, and the one little screw in the corner. And then to take this off, this is a little tricky because on these, the volume knob here is actually glued onto the little volume adjustment pad that's part of the volume control. So these don't usually want to come off easily, and kind of the way you have to do it is, as my father used to say, you have to force it carefully. And there's a variety of different ways to try to do this, and I think in this case we're going to try a screwdriver and see if we can pry it off a little bit. If you're a little lucky, the glue that they used to glue this on has dried out and it comes apart pretty easily. So here's the actual knob, and here's the platform that it sits on, and this stuff here is the glue that glued it on. So that's kind of a pain in the neck. So once you get the knob off, you can put that aside, and then you can lift the board out of the faceplate and we can turn it over. Now the board will be connected to the speaker with these red and black wires, and they're soldered onto the back of the speaker, so you really can't remove the board completely. You just have to sort of juggle it around. Once you've taken the board out of the faceplate, you can carefully pull the caps off the 3 switches and set them aside. And other than their difference in size, these two are the same, and this one is half the height. They all fit in the same spot, so you don't have to worry about where they go too much. And by doing it this way, you can get better access into the plunger switch from this side than you would if you try to spray it on the body of the switch here. These are pretty well sealed on this side, and it's really hard to get any cleaner in the switch. So that's why it's necessary to take the board off, take the button caps off, and work on it from this side. So as always, we're going to take our cloth or our rag to catch the overspray, and we're going to use our Deoxit D5 like we recommend for all NuTone speakers. This happens to be a brand new can I just opened up, so it's nice and full. One of the things I'm going to point out on this is, which I think you can see, is these have an adjustable nozzle here. So this actually turns, and marked down in here it says L, M, and H, which is low, medium, and high, and that's the strength of the spray as you squirt it out. You don't need to have it on medium or high. Low is just fine for most of what we do. I just thought I would point that out. So what we want to do is we want to clean the volume control, and unlike other NuTone volume controls, there isn't a lot in the way of openings on these. So the best way to do it is you want to spray it right here between the metal body of the volume control and the nylon shaft. So we'll just spray a little bit in here, and then we'll turn it back and forth. And you can actually feel it's better already, and maybe you can't hear it, but I can, how it's smoothed out just with those few turns. And then we'll put a little more, and you just work it back and forth, and you'll feel it improve. Now, once you get the volume control cleaned up so it feels better and it turns smoothly, now we're going to clean the 3 push button switches. So the push button switches are, this is the push to talk button, this is the door on and off button, and this is the talk lock button. And the talk lock button and the door on or off button, they're latching switches, so when you push them they stay down, and when you push them again they pop back up. The talk lock, and that doesn't get used a whole lot, but since you went through all the trouble to take it apart, of course you want to clean everything. So basically what you want to do is you want to spray the cleaner right down here. What you have is the plunger shaft here, there's a little metal keeper, and there's a spring, and then into the body of it, and you can actually see on this the dust that kind of falls off of it. At least I can see it. Anyway, take your cleaner, put a little bit in each one. That was 3 little squirts each, and little meaning little, and then work it back and forth and push this one up and down a bunch of times, and do this one, and then I would do it again, and then work them some more. Okay. Now, one of the disadvantages of this type of design on the ISB53 is that you have to disconnect the intercom wires so you can remove the screws, so you can remove the board, and then turn it over to clean the switches. So while you're doing this, you can't assess or judge how much better the switches are becoming as you clean them and work them back and forth, because it's disconnected from the system, and that makes it a little bit more difficult because you don't know how good of a job you're actually doing. So in those cases, what you want to do is be very conscientious about your cleaning, and even if you have to stand there and you spray each one a little bit 3 times and then work them back and forth, and then maybe even spray the volume control a little bit one last time and turn it back and forth, you have a better likelihood that when you reassemble it and hook it back up and try it out, you will have been successful in your cleaning, and the scratchy intermittent sound from the volume control and the scratchy sounds when you push the buttons in and out will be gone. If you just do it quickly and not very conscientiously, you may find that you have to take it all apart and do it again. So let's do it properly the first time. Once you think you've got it cleaned well enough, there'll be a certain amount of residue on the board from the spraying. So of course we're going to clean that up a little bit because workmanship counts. In this case, these are little jumpers and they're a little bent, so I'm going to straighten those out a little bit. Alright, so now we're in good shape here. So we're going to put our button caps back on, and they just sort of snap in place. If these are dirty, like this one is, you've got this sort of ridge of dirt right here. You can always wash these or use a damp rag and just wipe them off, which I will do after the video, because we're not going to take it back out to the customer's house and have it be dirty. So we'll put those back on, and then you go ahead and you can sit this back in place. Make sure you don't pinch the red and black wires when you put it back together. See, now if I wasn't paying attention, even though you can't see it, the black wire is right there under where that screw goes. So you have to be conscientious about how you do this. This will probably be one of those projects for most people that by the time you're done doing all 5 or 6 of these that you have in your house, you'll actually be an expert at it. These are always very fussy to do. And maybe if you turn it over, it's easier to line up the buttons. So once you get it so it's in place, you can hold the board down, and then I usually put the screw in the corner first. And then this one in this corner. To hold the board down properly. Now I'm going to put the rest of the screws in, so I'll be right back. Okay, so I've got all the screws back in and the board's in place as it should be. One of the things I want to point out is, since you have to disconnect the wires from the screw terminals completely to take the speaker out, to take the board out, to turn it over to clean the switches, now you have to put the wires back on. And a lot of people, it's like, oh no, where do the wires go? Well, if your system was wired with real NuTone wire, then the color coding of the wire is going to match the color coding labeling on the board. So this screw here is labeled as black/white, which is black with a white stripe. Over here we have orange/white, which is orange with a white stripe. Here we have black, here we have orange, here we have red, and finally red/white, which is red with a white stripe. Now, if your system, for some reason, which it should not, does not have real NuTone wire, and you have some other weird kind of colors like red and white and green and yellow and gray and purple, you're going to have to do one of a couple different things. Either you're going to have to write down on a piece of paper which color goes under which screw, or you can use your phone and take a picture of it before you disconnect it. And if failing those two things, if you forget how it goes, you can always go to the next room and take the speaker off the wall and look at where the different color wires are connected and copy it exactly. You have to get the right wires back in the right spots, otherwise the system's not going to work. So I don't recommend that you take all the speakers off at one time, because if you get distracted or something happens and you don't get back to putting them back in right away, you'll be one of those people who call me and say, I don't know where the wires go, and I've got gray and violet and teal blue, and where do they go? And it's like, I got no idea. I only know where real NuTone wires go. So documenting it is important, and it will save you a lot of frustration later on. The other thing you have to be careful of when you put the wires back on, this is a fairly small board, and this screw terminal here, the black/white, isn't too bad because it's off by itself. But when we get into this area here, you've got a lot of screws and you've got a lot of other little solder points. And when you hook these up, for instance, this one where the red wire would go, the wire goes under the screw, but you have to be careful that you don't strip the wire back too far so the bare part of the copper there's too much of it exposed, and then when you wrap it under the screw and tighten it down, the wire doesn't turn and accidentally touch this point here, because it's not supposed to touch that point, and then your system won't work correctly. Same thing with the black wire. If it's too long and it turns as you tighten the screw, it could possibly touch this one, or this one here could touch this one. So you have to be conscientious and careful and pay attention to what you're doing. Otherwise, you'll find that when you put it back in, it won't work correctly, and the other speakers in your system won't also. So that's sort of a warning for you. Okay, so we've cleaned the switches, we've put the board back in, and we have one last thing to do. And we have to put the knob back on the volume control. So here's our knob, and here's our volume control. And it's important, at least I think it's important, that we orient the indexing dot on the knob to the right spot when we put it back on. And the way you do that is you turn the volume control all the way. So now it's I've turned it all the way counterclockwise, which would be off, or turned all the way down. And now we're going to turn it clockwise, so that would be at maximum. But what you really want to do is you want to orient it, the dot, to the off position, because that's the only part of the grill that's actually labeled. There isn't anything over here that says maximum or high or anything like that. It's the off. So put the knob back on the little platform, line it up visually so it matches the off position, and push it back on. It's not usually necessary to put any glue back under the knob to hold it on. It has little serrations inside the knob and on the outside of the platform so it doesn't slip as you turn it, and usually the little bit of glue that's on there is sticky enough still that it'll help hold it in place. If you have one that tends to want to fall off, what I usually do is don't use contact cement, don't use silicone, don't use any kind of super glue or anything that's super powerful. Actually, what really works really well is use a little bit of glue stick. Glue stick works really well because it's kind of thick like paste. You can sort of smear it on here a little bit and then line up the knob and push it down so it helps fill up the void underneath it, and then you let it dry overnight, and that'll give it plenty of grip to hold the knob on. So that's all there is to cleaning the controls on your NuTone ISB53 intercom station. I hope you found this video to be interesting and helpful. I hope that you will do what's in the video and it will get rid of the scratchy sounds of your volume control and push button switches. If you like this video and it helped you, please give it a thumbs up on YouTube. If you would subscribe to our YouTube channel, we would appreciate it. Our YouTube channel and this video are ad-free and always will be. So by subscribing to our channel, it raises our search ranking so more people will find our videos. That's all for today. See you on the next video.